Hello everybody, Snaplocket here. It is day 23 of reveals, Demonic Pact reveals. That there's not really anything that was revealed today, but the league hasn't started yet, so I guess we're still technically in reveals season. The only maybe kind of interesting Mod Husky comment I saw today was him saying that he's going to continue to look at the DPS calculators, and it should get more accurate as the league goes on. Like, I know in particular the DPS calc on the wiki, it's still missing some things. One of the things that I was looking at was like it doesn't have anything for these two end game, these capstone bow pacts, right? That it doesn't work for like the repeat bow hit damage, so it's kind of impossible to calculate how good bow builds are going to be right now, which is a little bit annoying because I was interested in potentially building some early or mid-game build around the Nature's Recurve from the Echo Hespori, but I can't quite tell if it's going to be good or not. So if you can't tell based on the disorganized nature of the screen that I've got here, but one, I'm tired, I'm frazzled, I'm so excited for tomorrow. I feel so overwhelmed still. I've been on and off trying to run DPS calcs and build some mid-game builds, and so I wanted to put out some video today because yesterday I promised I would, and I also think I promised somewhere that today's video might be a little disorganized. If I didn't, well, it's going to be a little bit disorganized. One thing that I should say right off the bat is last night I was actually featured on a podcast that another YouTuber did. I sat down on a podcast with another YouTuber by the name of I'm Sid Vicious. We had an awesome time together. We were chatting for like a little over 2 hours, just talking about leagues and pacts and relics and our specific builds. I had a great time. So if you are interested in listening to that, I'm going to drop a link to that in the description of this video. Go check it out. Again, it's podcast style, so it's great for like second monitor content, or you can just put in some AirPods or some Bluetooth headphones or something and let it like play in the background as you're going about your day. It was a super awesome time. Sid was a great host and was super interesting to talk to, and I learned a couple of things from the things that he was telling me, and I think that I was able to give him some good information, so it was a really fun time. Yeah, if you want to check that out and you want to hear more of my voice, then go check out that podcast episode. A link to it will be in the description of this video. All right, and with that, I'm just gonna walk you guys through what my build is going to be for this league, like what my final relic picks are, what my final region selection is, the demonic pact tree that I'm going to go down. And again, this video is going to be like very not edited, so you're going to hear a lot of mumbling and a lot of pausing and stuff like that, just because I truthfully, I don't think I have the energy or the time really to edit something, but I wanted to get something out as content for you all, and because I promised that I would show everybody what my final build is, and if you are interested in going a similar route, maybe you can like pick up a thing or two from the build and the theory crafting that I have here. Maybe it can be somewhat applicable to your plan, because I think I've got kind of a unique one, and it's going to be not efficient in some ways, and I'll try to talk about those ways when we get around to stuff. So let's take a look at it. I am going to pull up the OSRS Leagues countdown page. By the way, if you have not seen this site, I can drop a link to this one in the description as well. There's only 12 hours left, 12 hours, 16 minutes. This is a great website. It's got some really cool graphics in here, and you can like select, you know, the regions that you want, and it'll like change this graphic, and there's a way to like, you know, pull this up into like a really cool little PNG that you can share with your friends as like oh, here's like a snapshot of, you know, what my build and selections are looking like. And I think it's a great way to showcase exactly what I'm doing. So we're going to start with, let's start with the areas. Yeah, we'll just go down from top to bottom here. The areas that I have settled on, and this has not changed over the last couple of days, but I have finally settled on the order that I'm going to take these in. So I'm going to be picking Kandarin, Korend, and Desert as my 3 regions, and I'm unlocking them in that order. Kandarin first, Korend second, and Desert third. I was really flip-flopping between a lot of these. Initially, I was leaning towards going Korend first, but I think that the demonic pacts in the Kandarin area are just a little bit easier to acquire. They both kind of have their downsides. Korend relies on a lot of Chambers of Xeric stuff, and then obviously you've got like the Radiant Oathplate task in there. Whereas Kandarin, like 4 of the pact points, I think, come from like high Slayer requirement creatures. So neither of them are necessarily quick in terms of acquiring those pact points, but I think the plan that I have takes all of that into account. And obviously, since I'm, spoiler alert, I'm going down an airbender, air elemental route, like, you know, Slayer's a big focus in that whole system, in that whole plan. And so like the fact that Kandarin requires, you know, some high Slayer level creatures is not really that complicated. Especially for me personally, I think I'm going to hold off a bit on leaning into combat for the most part. I think my league is going to start off with a ton of skilling to get a bunch of points, to complete a bunch of tasks for area unlocks. With the main focus being to unlock the Culling Spree relic as quickly as possible. And so I guess with that, we can start talking about the relics that I have here. Now, this is the one, and I was saying this on the podcast last night when I showed this to Sid. I think my relic selection is very weird. So before you go down into the comments of this video and you're like, what the heck is this relic selection? You don't have a solve for agility. You don't have a solve for herblore. You don't have a solve for runecrafting. I know. I'm taking this league very weirdly. I'm not too worried about some of those skills taking a long time. I'm also not point maxing. I'm definitely going to go for a dragon trophy on this account that is doing this playthrough. And I don't mind if that takes a while, because I plan on doing multiple builds this league. And so this is what I've done in the previous 2 leagues is I'll start an account out, you know, I'll push it through tier 8, get all the combat buffs going on, do some fun PVM with friends, and then when that playthrough kind of starts to die down a bit, I push it off to the side. I start focusing on a lot more of those longer tasks, those less some of those more like maybe AFK tasks, or just, you know, less focused tasks. And so that's why I don't really mind if, you know, herblore takes a while, if agility takes a while, if runecraft takes a while, you know, some of these things, because that account is going to be, you know, side monitor content as I start a second playthrough. So that's my explanation for why I don't have like the 3 worst skills solved on here. Also, I'm in like the 1% of people that kind of doesn't mind training agility. And so I know I'm a weirdo for that. Agility doesn't scare me at all. What does scare me is early game Hunter. And you'll hear me mention a lot of things that's like, oh, Hunter this, Hunter that. Part of my day 1 skilling plan is leaning heavily into Hunter. I might even max Hunter as like the first thing that I kind of do in the league, which would be a lot of points in and of itself, which is, you know, kind of a cool way to start the league. And so anyways, we're going to go through this. This is my final relic selection. I really don't think I'm going to flip on this. The only one that could potentially flop is Minion. And actually, I still need to do some calculations between Map of Alacrity and Evil Eye for me. I need to look at my regions and see how the teleports compare between the 2 of them. That is on my to-do list today before I fall asleep. And so it is possible that I may flip-flop in the tier 3 category, but we're going to go Endless Harvest. I don't think any of these tier 1 relics are incorrect for anybody's choice. Like, I think they're all really good. I really want to lean into Endless Harvest when it goes back into when I get Flow State eventually. And so that interaction between those 2 excites me, but I could also see an argument being made for Flow State mixed with Barbarian Gathering, or honestly Flow State mixed with Abundance here as well. I think they've all got some really cool and really fun like late game gathering skill interactions. But for me personally, I'm going Endless Harvest. Part of that leans into taking Transmutation in Tier 4, and I think that Endless Harvest is going to be a good way to gather lots of resources quickly. I think it's going to outperform Barbarian Gathering, and then with Transmutation, I'm going to be able to turn those into higher tier resources. So that's kind of my thought process there. I'm definitely thinking about like gems. I'm thinking about hardwood logs, so your teaks turned into mahogany logs, that sort of thing. Woodsman should not be a surprise to anybody. If you just heard me talking about Hunter, like if you are scared about Hunter or you want to lean into that, then this gives you the best Hunter buffs that you can have in the game, and that's the main reason I'm taking it. But I've been set on that pretty much since they revealed that relic, and I'm even more set on it after they revealed the task lists for these. I know Hunter, or I should say Woodsman, got kind of a bad rep when it was first announced because people were like, oh, what does Woodsman really solve? It gives you Hunter benefits, that's really good, but then the other skills, fire making, fletching, like those already have quote unquote solves in the Varlamur region. Or if you're taking Zaya like I am, then, fire making is pretty much solved with Winter Taught. But I think I'm really going to appreciate having these fletching benefits, not only for the early game, because my early game involves, getting and fletching some weapons. But if we look at the task list here and we search for this non-combat skill thing that they have here, there are a couple of there are a couple of tasks that involve getting multiple skills above 25 million XP and multiple skills above 35 million XP. And we knew about the 100 million and like the 200 million tasks, which I think are down here. Yeah, there's a 200 mil task, but here's another one, 50 mil and 3 non-combat skills. Fletching is going to be very easy to work into those, multi non-combat skill, high XP thresholds. It's going to be super easy to work into it, especially once you get flow state at tier 7. And so it's just another benefit that I'm excited about because of Woodsman. And so yeah, that's why it really did solidify itself as my tier 2 pick. Again, I already talked about tier 3. I'm still kind of bouncing back and forth between Eye and Map. I think I might be able to stomach taking Map and having a slightly longer run time to all my bosses. I don't think that I'm going to need to have, instant teleport access to those. But again, I need to actually step through. What I want to do is step through all of the Evil Eye teleports in my regions and see if there's a comparable teleport in the map of Alacrity. And so that's on my to-do list for tonight, and you'll see my final decision there when you see my playthrough video tomorrow, because we're definitely hitting tier 3 tomorrow. Hopefully tier 4 or 5, yeah. Okay, tier 4. Transmutation just looks like too cool a relic not to take. I'm not super interested in Butler's Bell just because it seems like it works a little bit slowly for my play style, especially, early on. But this is another tier that I really don't think there's a bad choice here. So if you want to go Butler's Bell, you want to go Clues, or you want to go Transmutation, I think they're all pretty good. I was just looking at them, and Transmutation just looks like a lot of fun. And so I kind of picked that one, and then after picking it, I was like looking into the benefits, and there were enough benefits in there. I'm definitely interested in transmutating bones for prayer XP, since I'm not taking Soul Harvest. I'm very interested in some of the money making that you can do with transmutation. As soon as you unlock it, you can start turning fire runes into cosmic runes, or death runes or nature runes, and just like insta sell those back to a shop. So it becomes kind of an earlier game money solve, which is kind of cool. I'm interested in converting gems up. I talked about this earlier, but converting like all the teak logs from Endless Harvest into mahogany logs for a little bit more construction XP. You know what I mean? It's one of those relics that's like, it doesn't do one specific thing. It's kind of a lot of different smaller benefits. One of those being that one of those benefits being that it gives passive magic XP. And since I'm going down a mage elemental route, I figure, once I unlock transmutation and I'm just constantly transmuting stuff, I really don't have to worry about training magic through a lot of those like early levels. And by the time I'm actually doing combat and I need to use magic, I think it's going to be at a pretty decent level. So that's kind of fun. Okay, let's move on to tier 5. I'm picking Larcenist in this category, mostly because it's a clue scroll solve for me. And this really became important once I started leaning into the air elemental route. I could see an argument being made for taking Nature's Accord as a herblore solve or taking Soul Harvest as a prayer / runecraft solve. But Larcenist with Kandarin, I think, is going to be pretty dang good for clue scrolls. And we'll talk about this in a couple of minutes here when I start going through kind of my end game gear setup. There are some items that you need for an Airbender build that come from clue scrolls. And so, plus there's lots of points in clue scrolls, and I also kind of just like doing clue scrolls on a league. I like the boosted loot. And so, I'm still a little bit sad that I'm not taking conniving clues. I really like clue relics, but I think Larcenist is going to be good enough for me. And then it does give me some other sort of passive solves. Like obviously it solves thieving in general. There's some interesting interactions between, thieving certain stalls, like the ore stall in Moral Wreck, and then transmuting all of those ores up into, super high tiers. That could be super fun. Larcenist is also, pretty decent for some AFK GP if it seems like transmutation's not working for me, or if I need to transmute something that I'm not selling, then, just training thieving through Larcenist is going to be some passive GP. So I think there's enough benefits there for me to take Larcenist. I don't think I'm going to regret it too hard. The only thing that might get me that I am worried about is like training herblore. It's another kind of potential benefit of transmutation that you can transmute herb seeds up. And since I'm going to be getting a lot of herb seeds from the Woodsman Relic, I'm hopeful that if I'm just on top of all of my farming runs that, I've got access to a lot of farming patches in both Kandarin and Karend. So like I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to just grow a lot of herbs and secondaries sort of the old-fashioned way, and just have exactly the seeds that I need by using transmutation, and also Larcenist for pickpocketing master farmers. So I think I'm going to be fine with farming and herblore. But that I think that's the one thing that like this time next week I might be like, oh no, I should have taken a herblore solve, because now I can't make overloads in Chambers of Xeric. I can't even make brews and restores. But, we're just going to have to see. I'm just going to kind of bite the bullet there and struggle through herblore. So tier 6 should be no surprise. Culling Spree is just really good if you have any build that involves doing anything with Slayer. And so this is a must take for me. And yeah, Grimoire doesn't really get me anything actually, because between Kandarin, Karend, and Desert, the only things that I'm missing are like the Royal Titan scrolls from Asgarnia, which I've got better versions of them in Karend anyways. And like the Lunar Spellbook from the Fremenic region, which I don't think is really going to be that useful for me. So I've got Ancients in Desert, I've got the Arceus Spellbook in Karend, I've got Rigor and Augury in Karend, I've got Piety and Chivalry in Kandarin, so Grimoire it doesn't do anything for me. Eternal Sustenance looks really good, but I think I'm going to be fine with food, especially because I plan on taking Flask in tier 8. And I plan on speccing into Water Elemental, which I'm hoping is going to be, enough sustain in certain PVM encounters. Okay, Flow State. This is the one that, like, I think somebody could take my entire relic tier here and be fine with it, except for Flow State. I think if you want to follow in my footsteps and you want a better solve, I really think the smarter choice here is to take Reloaded into Nature's Accord for herblore and farming solve, or maybe Reloaded into, like, honestly, the smarter pick here is probably to pick clues in tier 4 and then take Nature's Accord in tier 5 and then reload back into Soul Harvest. If I was going to recommend my entire build here to somebody else, that's what I would recommend you do, is clues, Nature's Accord, reload into Soul Harvest. And I think that would solve more things than my relic tier here. But Flow State is another one of those relics that when they revealed it, I was like, oh, that's just so cool. I want to take that for the cool factor. And I'm willing to accept that it's going to make me struggle in some other areas. That's just a personal choice. That is, I play Leagues for a lot of fun. I play them to play fun, combat builds and to play with fun relics. And so this is just my sort of choice. And it was kind of like Transmutation, where like as soon as I settled on Flow State, I started looking into the other benefits that it provides. Like, it's a huge speed up for smithing for me. It makes most fletching actions like 1 tick once you get the fletching knife from the Veiled Totems minigame. And so that just further solidifies fletching as a really good skill to push to 200 mil or to, add to some of those 25, 35 mil, 50 mil tasks that are non-combat. So it's just got a lot of like fun interactions with some other things, and I'm just kind of excited to take it. So that is my tier 7 choice, and that's kind of my reasoning behind it. Tier 8, I'm leaning Flask just because the explosion damage looks pretty cool, and I think it's going to be fun to play with. And I will admit part of this is just because like then you do have that item in your inventory that can kind of be used for unlimited heals. Obviously, it has a cooldown, and you can't just spam it. But it does mean you can go into something like Colosseum or Inferno, and like if you make a horrible mistake and you're like, oh shoot, like I kind of need to eat, I can just hide behind a pillar, wait for a minute, wait for my flask to recharge, and then you've got that unlimited source of food. There's gonna be a while before I reach tier 8, and so it is possible that I flip to the Minion Relic. I think the Minion Relic is really good. I personally think that the Minion Relic is the strongest tier 8 relic. I think if you are looking for a straight like DPS increase to your build, I think Minion is the way to go. And then obviously it automatically loots items. I think it's really good. I think Flask just might work for me a little bit better. But this might depend on how powerful the water build actually is, because like I said, I'm going into some water relics as well. And so if I feel like the sustain from water spells is good enough, and obviously you've got like the prayer regen from air spells, I might not take Flask, and I might go with the Minion Relic instead. And so, I've got 7 whole tiers before that to actually get up to that point. Like in Raging Echoes, tier 8 was at 25,000 points. So that's not something that you're going to get on the first day. It's not something that I'm probably going to get for several days, even though I'm going to be playing pretty hard. So we'll see what I actually decide on there. But this is the current plan for relics. Next, let's talk about Demonic Pacts. This is the part that I have spent the most time on. And I think I'm going to pull up the wiki version of the pact tree instead. As you can see, I've got several different work in progress things here. We're going to kind of go through them, but I wanted to showcase the end game pact tree, and I'm fairly certain that this is what it's going to look like if I end up reaching 40 pact points. I gotta admit, the Tazar Rex special Jad challenge scares me, and as does kind of Radiant Oathplate, and so I have built this in such a way that I think I can knock off these 2 ranged relics and still be totally fine with everything. In which case this would be a 38-point build, and I wouldn't have to do Radiant, and I wouldn't have to do the Tazar Rex special challenge. We will see if I actually get there. Right off the bat, though, I should note my current plan is to do a 2 pact tree system. So this is the end game pact tree. This is what I'm going to end up with, but I have a different tree that I'm going to use up until I get the Echo items from the Echo Thermonuclear Smoke Devil. At which point I will reset my pack tree intentionally and build this one out more into like the air elemental and into melee, because as you see, my early pack tree, as you will see in a couple of minutes, my early pack tree does not involve melee at all. But I think it's fun to talk about the end game pack tree first, so that people can see what my main goal is, and that'll make the early pack tree make a little bit more sense. Like I said, I am doing mostly an Airbender build, but I think mine's a little bit weird. I've seen a lot of people who are taking Airbender. I'm missing a couple of these accuracy relics that you see like here and here. Most people take those. I think a lot of people aren't really speccing into melee at all. And I've seen some air builds that involve the crossbow build that I have here. Some of them look a little bit different. I am going for a tribrid type setup, so I'm definitely sacrificing some potential in the air build. But when I was looking at the bosses that I have in my region, and I think I can actually pull up my this OneNote doc here. This is where I've been doing a lot of my theory crafting. As you can see, I've got like tabs for all kinds of stuff, and hopefully there's no like spoilers up in the tabs at the top or something that's gonna like out me in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so here we go. I'm put together this list of bosses that are in my regions, and I tried to use like sort of an end game build in the DPS calc. In fact, I think I have that here as well. Yeah, this is sort of what I was looking for, like a maximum air build, a max water build, which would be with like Ancestral, the max crossbow build in my region, which would be like Missouri and Dragon Hunter crossbow with like a buckler, max light melee, which would be like Oathplate with a tentacle whip and a Zill. Actually, I think DFS would be better here, but I just don't know if that's realistic to put on a DPS calc, so I'm trying to be a little bit realistic here. Then I was comparing it to like some mid-game melee and you know, mid-game crossbow builds with like Moons of Peril gear, since those are pretty good. And I was looking at all the different monsters, and this is when I'll pull this list back up of all the monsters that I have in my region, or I should say all the bosses that I have in my region. And I was looking into like how viable is an air build against them, and pretty much anything that has an elemental weakness, air mage is really viable. One of the major exceptions is Vardorvis, because he's got really freaking high magic defense, and so even though he has a 35% fire weakness, I think a melee build is still just going to be better there, even if it was like a mid-game melee build. Like if I pull up Vardorvis here, and maybe the Awakened version's a little bit more interesting to look at. It's like, well, I mean, what's funny is that you can even see that the max air build is technically higher DPS than a max light melee build. But just with the accuracy thing here, I feel like it might be more consistent to go down a melee build. We will actually see, but you know, you can even see right here the air build, at least with what I have set up, it's so good. It's like even in places where it shouldn't be good, it's pretty dang good. And then if you look at something that's like, you know, actually designed to be maged, what's a good example here, like maybe Yama is a good example. Let's look at Yama in here, like normal Yama phase, you know what I mean, like you're looking at 54 DPS, like max hit of 100, expected hit max hit 110, expected hit nearly 100. You know, that's pretty dang good and pretty dang fun. So all that to say that when I looked at all the bosses that I had, it made more sense to me to focus a little bit more on a tribrid build, because any situation where you were kind of trying really hard to like take as many accuracy pacts to like make mage worth it, it seemed to me to be better to just use the off style. You know what I mean? I think like a high tier, which one was it? I think it was Baba that I was looking at. That like if you look at Baba in, not Babo, if you look at Baba in like a 500 scale TOA, it's like the air build is pretty dang good, 19.5 DPS per second. You're struggling a lot with accuracy here. I don't think that the eye helped out that much. Like if you do 50 eye damage, it doesn't really change. But then you look at like the crossbow build that I have here, which does take these relics into account. Maybe missing like the two here, like I said. Even if we look at that, well, I guess then air kind of beats it out. Maybe air is good. After all, I don't know. It's just sort of like those situations where you're looking at like Chambers of Xeric, Vaza, in like a challenge mode, and like mage just no matter how you cut it, mage just is bad against this guy. And so then if you're not leaning into a range build at all, then you're kind of struggling there. And so I'm thinking about like not necessarily solo encounters, but my wife also plays RuneScape and she's going down like a very heavily melee focused build. And so I'm like, if she doesn't really have any strong range packs and I don't have any strong range packs and we do raids together, and we're at Ulm and we're killing that head with just like normal stuff, then like it made sense to me to kind of spec into the crossbow pacts a little bit. And again, mostly because I didn't really see any benefit in doing anything else. I already had a lot of this planned out because there's some good like accuracy pacts down here. And so it didn't take that many more to go down a crossbow route, which gives you really solid range coverage. And like same into the melee build, like, this lightweight melee gear really does do pretty dang well against something that you're going to want to melee, like Sol Heredit, for example. You know what I mean? Like 23 DPS against Sol with this light melee build is pretty dang good. And so, if there are tasks that involve doing multiple Colosseums and it's just kind of fun content, then I wanted to round myself out. And I think this is a pretty good way to do it where I'm not sacrificing too much into the end game elemental build. And it still gives me the freedom to comfortably do content that requires melee or requires range. That was just my thought process here. There's probably going to be some people who, think otherwise and think that it's dumb to spec into crossbows or think that it's pointless to spec into melee. Maybe you have an idea to do a really big melee build and just get all of your melee content out of the way and then reset your pack tree and focus heavily on elemental builds, and you will probably hit bigger numbers than me. But the numbers that I was seeing with this particular build were big enough for me. I think it's going to be a ton of fun, and so that's kind of what's drawing me towards this as an end game relic tree system. And again, hopefully I can get these last two in the crossbow category. And I'm pretty happy with this. I spent a lot of time over the last like 2 days really drilling into this. This part doesn't really scare me. What I'm struggling with right now, what I'm kind of struggling with at this point is, what does my early pact progression look like? Because air magic takes quite a bit of gear to make it really worthwhile. You need a lot of prayers to be active and stuff like that. Water magic I think it's probably pretty decent, especially I've seen a lot of people saying they're going to take desert first so you can lean into ice spells. I actually think that's probably a pretty good way to go. Initially I was actually going to go a light melee build with just a DDS because I've got this up here somewhere. This looks like it. Yeah, this is my like early game options build. Let's look at something like maybe a KZD is actually a pretty decent example. Like a Fight Caves creature. Well, I guess I'll show you why I was looking at it initially, and it was like Moons of Peril, you know what I mean? Like a 3-tick Dragon Dagger, and again, this is just with a Strength Amulet, a Combat Bracelet, and a Dragon Dagger at 3 ticks on Slash. It goes up to like 10 DPS, which is actually pretty good. And so like 3-tick Dragon Dagger with just these 9 pacts that you can get really easily, this can carry you through a lot of early game content. So if you want to lean melee initially, this is what I recommend doing. I really tried to get a blind bag set up with the Infernal Tech Paddle that was comparable to this. I'll switch this to the Slash option. for like comparison. By the way, this is going with 70 strength and 70 attack, boosted with a normal attack and strength potions, which I guess if you're going to moons, you would, want the moonlit potion. And so we can look at that instead. And that kind of boosts the DPS even more. Yeah, and this is with the same pacts and with the infernal Takapatl. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. So, anyways, we've got three comparisons here, right? You've got 3-tick Dragon Dagger leaning into the light weapon build. You've got the infernal, the Echo Amoxicliatal item leaning into a blind bag build, and then I also wanted just to see if the Echo Amoxicliatal item was decent, kind of without the blind bag build, and so that's what the third one is here. And so yeah, again, gear. I'm really just going simple. It's weapon, it's strength amulet, it's combat bracelet, which I think you can get all of these pretty darn easily. Maybe the Dragonstone might be difficult if you're not taking transmute, but if so, you can probably just leave that off, and I don't think it really changes the comparison much here. Oh, and the other thing is the blind bag build. I tried really hard to get this thing to be better than a 3-tick Dragon Dagger. This is an unrealistic blind bag for where you would be at this point, because I wouldn't recommend you spending the Tokkul to get an Obby Maul and an Obby Mace. And if you're starting out at Moons of Peril, you're not even going to have the dual max, the big max, right? But I was really trying. I'm like, what are the 5 most powerful weapons that I can find that you could acquire like early on in the game with these regions, and it's still not as good as a 3-tick Dragon Dagger. And not even at bosses where the Dragon Dagger doesn't have an option. So if we look at Blue Moon, which is weak to Crush, and you switch the Dragon Dagger back to Stab, and you put the Echo item on Pound. Oh, well, I lied here, actually. Then the and I don't want to edit this video, so I can't cut it out. Okay, so I lied to you just now. The blind bag build with this is better, but the Dragon Dagger is not that far behind. It really is not. And if I also set this to... Oh, this was on Crush before anyways, so yeah, like, yeah. What am I even saying at this point? Let's look at Blood Moon again. I think I had this one on the wrong setting. Set everything to slash. Set everything to slash. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yes. So 3-tick Dragon Dagger at Blue Moon is, I think, still comparable to the Echo Amoxicliatal item. If you set it to Stab and you set these two to Crush, it's like less than 1 DPS lower. And then also you can look at the Eclipse Moon, like regular phase. This one kind of sucks to kill. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong with these DPS calcs or something, but this guy's tanky. And so yeah, basically all that to say, in fact, I don't even know why I'm talking so much about this melee tree, because this is not what I'm doing. This is what I was initially doing, but this is not what I'm doing, because this whole time you're probably wondering what the heck are these other two builds over here. First of all, I think that an MSB build, I was really trying to get some bow, early game bow pack to work. As I said earlier, the repeat bow hit damage pacts, these capstone ones, they don't work with the DPS calc yet. And I wish that they did, because I wish that you could see how they functioned against something, like a KZD. You spend a lot of time killing these if you're doing like a low-level Fight Caves run. But yes, this other build here is probably the one that I am going to go down. And I think you may have seen a lot of people talk about this, the Sunlit Hunter crossbow build. I think this thing's really easy to get into, especially if you are doing a hunter rush like I am. you're going to be able to get, the Moonlight Antler bolts. You're going to have the Hunter level to, collect all the hide you need for the mixed hide and the Sunlit stuff. And this thing just like really cooks in early game build. This is the Pacts. These are the Pacts that I'm thinking about going. This involves doing like, in fact, I think I have that on one of these. Here we go. Pacts. So let's look at this sort of section here. These 10 Pacts you can do without really having any gear and any like kind of combat prowess at all. And again, these final two are region specific. These are the ones that I'm going to do in the Kandarin region. If you want to do a Sunlit build start, I would just swap these two with like the easiest 2 tasks in whatever region you are picking first. And depending on that region, like I think Wilderness had like maybe 3 tasks that you could put on here, which is even better. But like 10, I think, is the minimum for the Sunlit crossbow build. And I've got that right here. This is the 10 build, the 10 packed crossbow build that I would say. You get those 10 pacts, and then I think you kill Echo Amoxicotl for the 11th pact, and that's when you would take the double accuracy crossbow. Compare this with the multiple Echo chance. I think double accuracy is better, but maybe in some situations multiple Echoes is. At any rate, these are like the next 2 that you would probably want to suggest if you're going this combat style immediately. But that's pretty much what my early game Pacts plan is Sunlit Hunter crossbow, some pretty basic ranged gear. There might even be some upgrades here depending on how easy crafting is. You could maybe go Regen Bracelet and Fury here. If you're taking Kandarin first and you get lucky with some Zenites, maybe you actually do an early Anguish. Maybe you can get a Ring of Suffering, which can help with some passive recoil damage. This is what I have struggled with the most, was getting here. And then how do you transition from this early game Sunlit crossbow build to the end game Airbender build? And this is where I've got to be honest with you, I'm still kind of working out what exactly to do. This is when I will pull my OneNote back up, and we'll just talk through kind of what the plan is, because my plan is broken up into like 3 different phases, and there's a lot of information here that I don't think I need anymore, but it's very disorganized. Let's look at, this is what we've been talking about right now. This is phase 1, option 1, which I think is the only option now. Spec into Sunlight Hunter crossbow, do these 10 pacts right here. And then that sets you up to be able to do some, higher tier content. Because again, if we look at that entry level build, you've got like 9 DPS against a Ketzek. I think against like Jad, it's, a little bit lower. Jad's kind of tanky. This is where maybe you could look into a rune crossbow, which also fits, really nicely into the crossbow tree. And so I think if you did rune crossbow with probably just some like diamond bolts that's going to, with very minimal effort, complement this early game crossbow build against some creatures that have a little bit higher defense. And then again, if you can take a couple more, there's this extra regen, which just gives you an extra chance to proc echoes. And then if you do like the multiple echo pact, then this thing actually starts to look, kind of decent. You've got nearly 8 DPS against, this early game Jad, which was comparable to what it was almost a little under 7 there. I think it's really easy to just pad this build a couple more, and again, acquire that rune crossbow, which should help with a lot of stuff. There's that task in the Zaya region, to kill 150 Lizardmen Shaman, and so the Sunlight Hunter crossbow is going to function pretty well there. Rune crossbow is even better, so maybe I'll look into getting one of those pretty early on. I think with a lot of fletching from the Woodsman relic, it's going to be pretty dang easy to acquire rune crossbow. Gotta drink a little bit of water there, stay hydrated. Yeah, that's sort of it. But how do you get from this build to the end game build? I think that's the most important part, and again, what I'm still struggling with. And so that brings us to phase 2 of this plan. And so far, I haven't decided which one I'm going to do. I think there's 3 options for me, and I'll kind of go through these. There's the option to spec into thrown weapons, and this is when we... my dog's shaking in the background. This is when we utilize probably the lots of chinchompas that we caught while we were doing our early game hunter grind. And so I was looking at a build that used 7 more pacts to look something like this, which, by the way, those pacts are pretty easy to do. I think this is what I was looking at in my regions for the next 7 pacts after those initial 10. You know, you kill your Echo Amoxhliotl, you get a fire cape. You can kill the Echo boss in your second region, which for me is Echo Hespori. I can't do Echo Thermi until I get 93 Slayer, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think I'll be able to kill enough demonic gorillas and, you know, train some crafting up to equip a piece of Zenyte jewelry. Again, a Suffering or an Anguish would help a lot with this build. So, you know, looking into that, I think the 150 Lizardman Shaman tasks is reasonable to do at this point. It might kind of suck. I think you could do a Skatizo kill, and apparently you can do the Tazarket Wreck 3rd challenge without needing an Infernal Cape in the league, which is really, really nice. So I think you can do these. This gets a lot easier if you do end up unlocking another region, you know, after this point, or during this point when you're building this build up. But I guess what my main focus is... and I'll pose the question, how do you get from this early 10 pact build to the end game 40? And the answer is Slayer. You need to be able to train Slayer because you need to get to 93 Slayer to unlock the Echo Thermi items, the Shadow Flame Quadrant, and the Devil's Element. So how are you going to train Slayer? And you can totally just brute force it, you know, with Sunlit Crossbow and a Rune Crossbow and, you know, build into this pact system. Or maybe even go from here into like a melee build. That was kind of something I was looking at. But yeah, like you could just do Slayer. If you get Culling Spree and you choose like a bunch of boss tasks, then maybe the crossbow build is enough. But I was looking at like how could you get a little bit more DPS? How could you maybe branch this out? And that's where I got these 3 options. So let's talk about the thrown weapon option, because this one's, I'm still not sure if this one's necessarily good. This one's very hard to calc because it involves taking the crossbow pacts that you have here, fleshing it out a little bit more with the multi-echoes, the extra chance to regen, and then you do this little branch over to the side here, where you get this capstone relic where thrown weapons will throw at an additional target. So my thought process here is like chinchompas. Again, probably going to have a lot of those chinchompas from a hunter grind. So like, is it viable to take a bunch of Slayer tasks, maybe in Catacombs of Korend or, you know, areas like that where you would be barraging or bursting, and instead just use chinchompas here? And is this going to be like a really fast way to train Slayer? And it only uses 7 more packs, so it's not really that much investment. And I'm planning on respecing anyways, so the fact that these aren't in the final build is fine. This is just to get me to 93 Slayer where I can, you know, kill Echo Thermi. This is option 1. I'm not sure if it's good. Option 2 is not even built yet, but it would look something like this. This is the one that I'm kind of currently working on what it would look like. It would either look something like this, or maybe you would go, you know, water instead of fire. I'm not sure, but the goal is to get to a 1-tick trident. And this is where I think it would be possible with, you know, probably this double crossbow relic. Maybe if you got lucky and you got a couple more. But this is still, you know, your 17 pacts that I was looking at there. And I was like, is it viable to grind the Doom of Macchiato at this point? And go for an Eye of Ayak and then spec into a 1-tick powered staff, and then you have an Eye of Ayak. And again, I don't have this in the DPS calcs at all. I really don't think I do. I've got a lot of these guys in here. This is kind of like my mid-game build, so like maybe this is interesting to look at. If we look at the Doom of Machiavel with this sort of, mid-game crossbow pact with just these 11, and you're looking at the sunlit crossbow, you're looking at 9 DPS against Doom, which is not terrible. And again, you could probably also look into switching this for a rune crossbow, and I would expect this to probably come out a little bit better if I do like Diamond Bolts E here. It'll be this build at the end. It's like 0.7 DPS higher with a rune crossbow. I don't know if ruby bolts would be better. I've found that diamonds usually better. Oh, rubies are better here. I've been finding that sometimes diamond bolts are better, just from like an accuracy perspective. And I think it's like chance to proc and chance for like echoes to hit or something. Anyways, I digress. The main goal of this option in phase 2 would be to grind out an Eye of Ayak from the Doom and then spec into that 1-tick trident and use like the Sunlit Hunter's crossbow and the Eye together to like do Slayer tasks really quickly. Eye functioning in at 1 tick will probably kill things pretty quickly. You won't have that multi-combat capability, but maybe you can do, some other creatures that don't involve that and still get pretty good Slayer XP per hour. Because that's kind of the main focus is, again, just getting up to 92 Slayer as quickly as possible. I am not sure. And then like the final option, and this one's more expensive, but this is, I was kind of looking at the tasks that are in the Kandarin region that, let's see, what am I saying? The tasks in the Kandarin region to unlock demonic pact points. And the one thing that kind of sucks about Kandarin is that you've got Abyssal Tentacle, Abyssal Necklace, Trident of the Seas, and Kraken Boss 50 times. And all of these are Slayer dependent, right? A Tentacle and Kraken, that's 87 Slayer, and Trident of the Seas as well. And then obviously Occult Necklace comes from Smoke Devils themselves, which is 93 Slayer. So like a lot of these tasks involve high Slayer, and once you reach that point, getting to a high Slayer level is kind of what we've been talking about. But like once you actually get there and you want to unlock these pacts, like how are you actually going to kill Kraken Boss? Because if there's one area that a ranged build is really going to struggle with, it is against Kraken. If we look at the mid-game builds that I have here, and this is why I have 2 builds, one with a Trident of the Seas and one with Earth Surge. If we look at the Kraken Boss, it takes heavily reduced range damage. I think it's like 1/7 of the range damage. So with a rune crossbow build, which I've just realized now I've duplicated. I already had one on here. I have a lot of DPS calcs open. With the range build, with the Sunlit Crossbow build and the RCB build, like the DPS is abysmal. So even if you don't have any pacts at all, like I've calced all of these with just the crossbow pacts, just those 11 points there, not specking into magic at all, like a bare minimum mage build with a Trident of the Seas, if you get one lucky from a normal Kraken, or Earth Surge, which for me should be pretty doable because transmutation, I can get Wrath runes really easily. And I should have the magic levels at this point to cast a high level spell like that. And also, I think I've calced all of these with like base 75 stats. I guess I've got 99 magic here. I'm not really sure if the magic level matters so much from a DPS perspective against something like this. Maybe with the Trident it does, actually. So maybe you're looking at something more like, well, what level does Earth Surge require? I don't actually remember. Somebody tell me. I'm going to pull it up on the second monitor here. Give me just a second, or I guess I can go in here. Here, we got a wiki page here. Earth Surge. Let's just say that we are at 90 magic, which is when you can cast Earth Surge. Okay, great to go. What was I looking at? Here we go. 90 and 90. Okay. Yes. That's more so what you're looking at here. Wow, maybe that really does affect overall DPS. Oh, I guess not so much with the Earth Surge. It's 6.1 versus 5.8. Yeah, not that bad. But with the Trident build, I think there's a pretty big difference. 5.4 versus 6.2. So, but still, this is a viable option. And again, this is just without any pacts. So that's kind of what I was looking at, like, oh, well, maybe it makes sense instead of speccing into throne stuff to instead spec into some sort of magic build. And it was at that point that, like, this is kind of going to depend on how the plan shakes out. It's option 3 of phase 2 here. I'm like, if we do those 7 tasks, and at that point, if we're close to the 3rd region, I can unlock desert. And I think there's 4 tasks in there that are pretty doable with kind of the build that you've got, especially since you would have those extra 7 points that you could, pad the build out a bit. So like 2 of these are really easy. The Ice Barrage and the Mummy Ablaze, super, super easy. I think Calphite Queen drops a Dragon Chain Body at a rate of like 1 in 32. So like you'd probably get a Dragon Chain Body while going for the Echo Orb to kill Echo KQ. And then Echo KQ, I really think you can get a kill down with this setup that you've got there. And so at this point, you're looking at having 21 total pact points. So I guess what I'm saying here is maybe holding off Slayer until you unlock your 3rd region, and then you've got 21 pact points to play with, and that is when you get a build that looks more like this. And so you've still got that same original crossbow tree down here, minus the extra regeneration chance and accuracy here. The extra echo chance here, but maybe you lean into desert magic and you go like a water barrage build. So this gives you like 1 elemental style, which is really, really powered. And it does give you the attack rate of all combat spells being sped up by 2. So this would help even in situations where you're attacking something that's not weak to water spells. You can still attack it with the elemental type that it is weak to, and you'll get that speed boost, which I think is going to be pretty good. And then what I'm kind of thinking of, and leaning this direction more because I am thinking about multi-combat Slayer, is like an Ice Barrage mixed with the water magic going to be like a kind of a powerful build there. And so, yeah. That's like, this is, again, option 3. And at this point, I really don't know which route I'm going to go down. Again, I still need to come up with some pact plan for the if I wanted to go 1 tick powered staff and see how that kind of works out. Anyways. That's where all my thought process is. I know I've been rambling and yapping on for a bit. I don't know if anybody found this interesting or insightful, but like I said, I wanted to give some sort of video today that was talking about this, and I was thinking it helped me process some of this, just yapping on for, a good 45 minutes. And so that is where I am leaning. I guess the one thing I'm not sure if I really showed off was like kind of the end game gear setup for the max air build. If you're looking at something like, again, I like Yama as an example of like where this really pops off. It's going to be like a very much a grind to get up to a lot of these things. But there is kind of a mid-game air build that involves something similar, but instead of like Virtus and Sunfire robes, you patch in vestment robes from Clues. Which that coupled with the Devout Boots is another reason why I need some sort of clue solve, is because I think my initial Airbender gear setup is going to be those vestment robes, so that you can hit the 50, prayer threshold that you need to really get this build to pop off. So it's going to be a fun gear set to hunt. It's another reason why I am interested in going down the Airbender build, because it gives me some items to chase and to look after, like the Bone Crusher necklace from the Hydra. You're going to do quite a bit of Colosseum there. My Virtus is probably going to come from Leviathan instead of Vardorvis. I think Air Magic does a little bit better there, or maybe even the crossbow build, is pretty good. Against like the normal Leviathan, the end game Airbender build does well, but if I don't have the Virtus in some of this yet, then maybe that's another reason why I'm thinking about, having the crossbow build in there as like an option. And so, yeah, that is good, like the gear setup, and we will see how it actually shakes out. I really think I have talked for enough time here, so hey, if you actually made it to this point in the video, let me know in the comments down below if you found this interesting. Maybe you just turned me on in the background and kind of listened to me talk about what my build is going to be. I'm sorry it wasn't a more polished video like you all are used to. This is literally just all that I could do with my brain today. And so anyways, dude, tomorrow is the League, and I am so excited for it. I'm so excited to enact this plan. I'm still, going to be doing DPS calcs and checking some things, and it's not really going to come together, I think, until it comes together, and I think I'm totally fine with that. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave this video here. Hopefully, everyone had a great rest of your day. Everyone try to get some sleep tonight, and I will see you in the League. I am going to be posting some League progress videos, so look forward to those. I think they'll be less rambly than this, but again, it's probably still not to the same polished level that's a lot of my other videos have been, just because I want to play the League and I don't want to spend hours and hours editing, but I'll try to put a little bit more effort into them than this. So have a great rest of your day. I will see you all tomorrow in the actual League. Bye. Good luck.